chair, though.
Just to make up for my lack of brain power compared to the two of you. Okay, everyone, welcome to the hearing. We'll begin by looking at a package of bills that will make New York City greener and more sustainable. Intro 54A requires DOT to study the feasibility of using alternative fuels and other types of green technology to power the city's ferries. Intro 880A requires DOE and DCAS to study the feasibility of using cleaner types of diesel to fuel school buses. Intro 1465A accelerates the timeline by 5 years for power plants to shift to the usage of cleaner fuel. Intro 1629A requires adoption of more stringent energy efficiency requirements for buildings. Intro 1632A creates an energy efficiency grading system for certain buildings. Building owners, including city government, will be required to post the grades in a visible location inside their buildings. I want to thank Speaker Corey Johnson, former Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Dan Zerilli, Senior Director of Climate Policy and Programs, Mark Chambers, Director of the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, Buildings Commissioner Rick Chandler, DEP Commissioner Vinnie Sapienza, Schools Chancellor Carmen Farina, DCAS Commissioner Lizette Camillo, DOT Commissioner Polly Trottenberg, EDC President James Patchett, Councilmember Costa Constantinidis, the Chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection and sponsor of Intro 54A and Intro 1629A, Councilmember Helen Rosenthal, sponsor of Intro 880A, Councilmember Richie Torres, sponsor of Intro 1465A, and former Councilmember Dan Garodnick, sponsor of Intro 1632A. Now I want to invite members of the audience to briefly comment on the legislation. I'm going to call people up. Let's see, we've got 5 people, and if you'll come over to the microphone here. Eric Goldstein of the Natural Resources Defense Council. Richard, I believe it says Yancey, forgive me, I can't read this effectively, Building Energy Exchange. Scott Frank. Isabel Silverman, and Maritza Silva Farrell of Align.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Happy New Year to you and
Happy
your
New Year.
family. We're delighted to be here today with so many environmentally positive bills on the table before you. We're particularly fond of Intro 1465A, which, as you know, would phase out home heating oil number 4 being burned in power plants around the city. Heating oil number 4 is a combination of relatively clean for a fossil fuel number 2 and bottom of the barrel number 6. It causes localized pollution problems around the city, as the health department has concluded. Particulate matter and other pollutants from the burning of home heating oil contributes to exacerbation of asthma, other chronic lung diseases. These adversely affect all New Yorkers, particularly members of minority communities and the poor in areas not only in Astoria but throughout the city. So this is a real step forward, and we hope that it's leading to the phase out of number 4 heating oil throughout all buildings in New York City. As you know, they're the #1 source of air pollution. We hope finally that this is the start of many bill signing ceremonies you have in your second term on environmental issues. You have a very aggressive agenda in your One NYC plan to advance sustainability in the context of equity, which we wholeheartedly support. And we look forward to being here on many occasions in the years to come. Finally, we hope also to have a dialogue with you and your staff on the issue of congestion pricing and how that can be advanced in a way that's fair and equitable for all New Yorkers, which again is a goal we share. Thank you for signing these bills today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, Mark, Dan, for being here. It's thrilling to be part of a city that continues to lead the way in climate action. Through this aggressive building energy efficiency goals and greenhouse gas reduction standards, New York City is truly setting an example for cities around the world. And we are proud at the Building Energy Exchange, a first of its kind resource that we've already helped over 12,000 New York building decision makers with training events, reports and case studies and exhibits to do both the simple and the holistic things to save energy and save money while making their buildings healthier and more efficient. We're particularly excited by these new bills, Intro 1629 and 1632, that promise to really push buildings, both new and existing, to drastically improve their performance, and building on the solid foundation of benchmarking and energy audits and retro-commissioning building grades will provide even greater transparency and actionable information. And at BX, we look forward to continuing our work as the neutral trusted advisor, whether helping building owners move their grade from a B to an A or to reach the new stretch performance codes. We continue to be inspired by our work with your amazing and dedicated team in the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and greatly value our partnership with the New York City Retrofit Accelerator, assisting and educating New York's already world-class building community to meet the biggest challenge of our time. Thank you very much.
On behalf of my amazing and dedicated team, I thank you.
Hello, my name is Isabel Silverman. I'm an attorney with Environmental Defense Fund. It's very hard to follow Eric Goldstein, but I agree with everything he said, of course. And I was working under the Bloomberg administration and Environmental Defense Fund with the phase out of number 4 and 6 heating oil, and 6 oil has been phased out. And as Eric mentioned, the 4 oil really should also be phased out a little sooner than 2030 in buildings. These buildings haven't had any real conversion costs yet. They were given a lot of time under the Bloomberg administration, hoping that they would convert voluntarily, but they really haven't. So I hope that there will be another bill this year, and I think it will be introduced by Councilmember Constantinidis to phase out 4 oil in buildings. But of course, I'm glad it's being phased out now in power plants. And then the energy efficiency bill, where buildings have to post their grades, that's of course a great first step, so that buildings are aware of how much energy they're using, and they have to communicate it with their tenants and residents and in co-ops, the shareholders. But that, you should build on that and also have a mandate now. We have the retrofit accelerator showing low-cost energy efficiency measures that buildings can do now that save them money, increase resident comfort, and Environmental Defense Fund is hoping that this will also be legislated in the next 4 years as a mandate that these buildings are acting now and that they have to act now to reduce their energy consumption, and not only 2030 or 2035, and that you build on this momentum that you have now, that you have the landlord's attention, that energy efficiency is a win-win situation. So thank you very much for all your efforts, and we're looking forward to working with you further.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and hello, I'm Scott Frank, representing ACEC. We are the engineers of New York City who design the systems that actually consume energy within buildings. We're particularly thankful to Mark and Dan, John Lee, the staff at the Mayor's Office, and also the City Council for involving the engineers in drafting and finalizing, in particular, Intro 1629. We think this is a very creative and thoughtful approach to articulating a process for regulating the performance of buildings some years in advance, 8 years from now, in order to be able to accommodate advances in technology that for sure will come along. So very appreciative of the process, and congratulations, and like the others, also look forward to many more of these signings.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maritza Silva Farrell. I'm the Executive Director of Align. And first, I want to congratulate you also for taking steps on addressing greenhouse emissions in our city. It's really critical. And as an organization that does a lot of work in the intersection of community and labor, ensuring that our communities are also getting jobs as we move into the new renewable energy, is important to think about that. So I think the first steps are very much welcome, and we appreciate it. On the Intro 880, I like to actually say that in terms of the biodiesel fuels, that sounds really good in terms of the buses. I think for our schools, for our kids, it's a good thing. It's a good first step. I'd like to actually invite you to also think a little bit about long-term solutions around electric buses for the schools. There is an opportunity here for us in New York City to change the way we have our fleets, ensure that our kids are going to have healthy buses, and electric buses is the best way to do it. So I wanted to just bring that up. We have a coalition with NRDC, with different organizations from labor and community right now working on this, where there is a lot of momentum. And we want to make sure that it's also a worker co-op that can do school buses will be the solution. And I think we'll look forward to work with you and your team to move that work forward. And in terms of the intro 1632A on energy efficiency, I think it's really valuable to have the scores and the grades of how the buildings are doing. That is a really good first step. Once again, we also want to invite the administration to continue doing the work in terms of thinking about energy efficiency in a whole, with a whole building approach in a way that also can address the needs of our communities as well as create good jobs, as we've thought about it in the past, and we've talked about it with some of the members of your team. So we want to thank you for these initiatives and look forward to work with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Did we get everybody? Okay. Excellent. So now we are going to sign these bills. You guys stand too. Come on, let's go. Yeah, it's like you gotta look portentous and bill signing. Bill signing. sorry, your job. Your work here is done. My work here is done.
Yeah, we didn't know. Yeah.
Hey, look, I like that.
Don't know.
Okay, let's close that door as soon as you can. Okay, here we go. Okay, now we will look at a package of legislation to help us build even more affordable housing. Intro, close the door, please. Intro 1036A requires me to designate an agency to conduct a census of vacant lots and buildings citywide and issue a report. Intro 10, it's a good thing. Intro 1039A requires HPD to report on vacant lots and buildings under its jurisdiction and their feasibility for conversion to affordable housing. Now my pleasure to introduce the sponsor of Intro 1039A and the chair of the Committee on Housing and Buildings, Councilmember Jamani Williams. Who brought his cheering section with him. Very good. Very good.
Thank you so much. Not sure if I'm still the housing chair, but I appreciate
This moment, go with the flow here.
I appreciate it. But I think this is an exciting package of bills. I couldn't find a better way to close out the year and my work as the housing chair than with this package of legislation. And I just want to say thank you to the advocates in the room. I'm not going to call anyone because there's so many, but without you, these bills wouldn't have gotten passed. It wouldn't have gotten pushed. I appreciated every tweet, every pressure point that was made to get these bills passed. We are in a housing crunch. Probably the biggest thing that people are asking for, if not work, is housing. And we have to make sure that we can account for every available parcel that is in this city. And I want to thank Commissioner Torres Springer, and the mayor for working with us to get these passed. My bill, in particular, is 1/3 of the Housing Not Warehousing Act. 2 of them will be passed. So HPD will annually report on city-owned vacant buildings or lots desegregated by council district, categorized by potential development or feasibility of developing building lots into affordable housing. It's a major tool to help us address the affordable housing and homelessness crisis that we face. If we want to use spaces for affordable housing, we need to know where the spaces are. And there's one bill left that I'm hoping in the next session will get passed. I want to shout out Public Advocate Tish James for the work she did that has to do with the fines. I came from knocking on doors as a tenant organizer and housing advocate to the housing chair, and it was an immense pleasure to have these bills, and I thank the mayor for hopefully, in a few minutes, signing them into law.
I'm ready.
Thank you.
I'm ready. Thank you very much, Councilmember. Also want to thank Speaker Corey Johnson, former Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, of course, HPD Commissioner Maria Torres Springer, Mayor's Office Operations Acting Director Emily Newman, and Councilmember Idanis Rodriguez, the sponsor of Intro 1036A. And we have 3 individuals signed up to comment on these pieces of legislation. I'd like to call forward Chaplain Deborah Dickinson of Picture the Homeless, Arvinetta Henry of Picture the Homeless, and Tawaki Kamatsu.
I'd like to wish you a happy new year.
Thank you.
And I get to see you in person this time. I saw you last year at the at the shadow count, you're very tall.
You are correct.
First of all, I'd like to thank Jawani Williams for sponsoring the bill and the other people. It's been a long journey, but it's been one that we have been persistent. And as being formerly homeless myself, I know what it is to be in a system that is just crowded. And I also would like to also put this in the memory of one of our founders, which happened to be Mr. Lewis Haggard, which was in the system also at Bellevue, because he had a dream, just like Martin Luther King. They had dreams. And as being a formerly homeless person, I thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Our motto is, talk with us, not about us. So thank you for this opportunity, because it means a lot for those who are homeless and those who are experiencing homelessness. I would also like to thank you for taking the time, because you are the first mayor that has really sat down and talked with us and listened to us. So I want to thank you for that, because that means a lot, because we are the people that are down under. We're grassroots. And we thank you so much. I don't remember any mayor that has taken time to sit and talk to homeless people. And I commend you a lot for that, because that makes people feel, because you're homeless, anything can happen at any given time. And I have a statement: if your money's not right, you'll be uptight.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank you, and we look forward also to working with you in the future on other bills.
Thank you very much.
My name is Mrs. Arvinetta Herring, and I have the honor to say Happy New Year's to
New Year.
everyone, because this is a new year, a new beginning. And I am so grateful for these two bills to be passed, and I'm looking forward to the next one to be passed, because Picture the Homeless, we have worked diligently for this bill. I have worn out about 6 pairs of shoes, going from buildings to vacant property buildings, trying to find out where the apartments were vacant, as well as the hidden apartments that was vacant in nature. And when I found out that there was, in my own old development, that there was an apartment had been vacant for 5 years, and my neighbor had been deceased, I was like, see, that's why we have to make sure this bill come to fruition. I think that this is a great bill, and it will help many, many low-income people. I was in the shelter while I did the walk and the count and so forth. Picture the Homeless. We went out there, we knocked on doors, we went to council meetings, and I was grateful for you taking the time to speak with us and other council people like Jamani Williams and Annabelle Palmer and Ricky Torrey and a couple of others that saw that this was a bill that was necessary. And I'm looking forward to actually, once this is passed and applied, to know that those vacant apartments will be actually put to use. People will be put in there. And we hope,
Go ahead.
we hope that in that process, that all of those that's in the shelter, they will end up having permanent housing, because family orientation is so important, and our children are suffering because of the system. So I thank you, Mayor. I thank all the others, council people that worked with us and saw the vision that we had. And Community Land Trust is another vision that we know that's going to help low income people. And thank you. Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
first time I met Mr. Williams, he's an awesome guy. He made a statement at a town hall meeting in Flatbush in April of 2017 telling us to hold our elected officials accountable. That came out of his mouth. Last time I met you, you told me don't come back at your Brooklyn town hall. You told me that you didn't understand why I kept coming to your public meetings.
Is this testimony on this
The reason
legislation,
why I'm here
sir?
today to testify about this bill
Good.
is because you are getting a pay raise. So here's my testimony. Prior to building on vacant lots, will you please earn your pay by personally fixing the crappy apartment building where I reside that HRA has let its landlord negligently fail to make repairs in, and in which I was assaulted on July 2nd of 2016, sustained a concussion that I reported to Mr. Banks face-to-face. He hasn't taken accountability for. So if that concussion cost me a job opportunity, and I talked to you on July 18th in Kew Gardens, I specifically asked you if you could help me get a job interview with your city agencies as a U.S. Navy veteran. You told me that you would follow the personnel process. So with regards to Mr. Williams' remark in April of last year to hold our elected officials accountable, you claim that you're committed to transparency, to fairness. So the question is, how can you substantiate that?
Again, this is not a hearing, my friend. This is a chance
will
for
be.
you to offer your statement on the testimony, and then we're going to move forward
It
with the
will
bill
be
signing.
in court, sir. Have a good day.
Take care now. Okay, that concludes the public testimony, and so we are now going to move to sign these two pieces of legislation. Whatever number. Okay, but I want you here, even though I know this very fine actress, I want to get you here because he's the bill sponsor. So get him on front. Okay. All sharing here. Okay, here we go. And how many do you want? 14 is it? How many do you have? Including the ones you want, right? I'll go slow while you figure it out. Do you need any more? This is the magic one. It is now law. now. All right, look forward to it.
Say it again? Oh. Yes or no?
Okay. Here we go for the last package of bills. We'll now look at 5 bills, 2 that will improve the lives of our young people, 1 that will improve the quality of life for all New Yorkers, and 2 that will clarify interactions between the public and the NYPD. Intro 1619A requires DYCD to report on access to shelter for runaway and homeless youth. Intro 1705A streamlines the process for runaway or homeless young people when they exit youth shelters and enter adult shelters. Intro 1653B authorizes DEP to issue stop work orders in response to noise violations. Intro 182D requires NYPD officers to provide business cards and explain their activities during certain interactions with the public. Intro 541C requires NYPD to develop and provide guidelines on obtaining voluntary, knowing, and intelligent consent prior to conducting searches that require consent. I want to thank Speaker Corey Johnson, sponsor of Intro 1619A and Intro 1705A, former Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, NYPD Commissioner Jimmy O'Neill, Social Services Commissioner Steve Banks, DYCD Commissioner Bill Chong, DEP Commissioner Vinnie Sapienza, Councilmember Costa Constantinides, Chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection, Councilmember Steve Levin, Chair of the Committee on General Welfare, and the sponsor of Intro 1619A, Councilmember Vanessa Gibson, Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Ben Kalos, sponsor of Intro 1653B, Councilmember Rafael Salamanca, sponsor of Intro 1705A, Councilmember Richie Torres, sponsor of Intro 182D, and Councilmember Antonio Reynoso, sponsor of Intro 541C. Want to call forward folks for public testimony. We have 4 people signed up, and again, come right over to the microphone. Beth Hoffmeister, I hope I'm saying that right, Legal Aid Society. Jamie Pavlovich, Coalition for Homeless Youth. Carolyn Martinez Class, Communities United for Police Reform. And Leo Ferguson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. You did say my name correctly. It is
All
Beth
right.
Hoffmeister, so thank you
All
for
right.
that.
You're welcome.
I'm here from the Legal Aid Society's Homeless Rights Project in support of 1619A and 1705A, which are the runaway homeless youth bills, which I hope we will also be getting pens for before too long, when hopefully you sign them. We want to thank you for holding the hearing. I just want to also point out I'm here with my colleague Teresa Moser, who's in the audience too. And both of us and everyone else at Legal Aid who work with runaway and homeless youth in the dozens of capacities that they touch the justice system are very happy to see kind of this first step to really support these group of young people. While we are happy to see them, and hopefully they'll be passed soon and signed soon, they've been passed but signed soon, but we do hope that this is just one step of the many steps that we want to see happen on behalf of runaway and homeless youth in the future. I work with a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness in New York City, and this is a very overlooked and underserved part of that population, and we're very hopeful that this is, again, one first step of many steps of how we're going to go on to support this group of young people going forward. I'm privileged enough to work with amazing people at my organization, with the city council, members of your staff, members of the city council staff, advocates, providers, lots of people who support these youth, but the youth themselves are truly some of the most dynamic people that I've ever met in my entire lives, and they really do deserve every bit of support that they could possibly get, because they're only going to be able to contribute amazing things to our city and, frankly, to the world as a whole. So I hope to continue to work with you on behalf of this population going forward.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Happy New Year and congratulations on your second term. My name is Jamie Pilovich and I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Homeless Youth. I want to thank the administration for letting me speak today, and I'm here in support of 1619 and 1705, the runaway and homeless youth bills that Beth just spoke about. Regarding 1705, many runaway and homeless youth report that they fear entering the DHS intake shelters because they find them unsafe and not supportive of their needs. 1705 would help support runaway and homeless youth by allowing them to bypass the DHS intake shelters and ensure a smoother transition from the youth system to the adult system. This change, along with the city eventually granting runaway and homeless youth access to city-sponsored housing vouchers, will have a significant positive impact on a young person's stability and eventually ability to exit homelessness. Regarding 1619, data is an advocate's best friend. I can't say that enough. Everyone wants the numbers. And 1619 will finally address the long-time need of better understanding how many runaway and homeless youth there are in New York City by tracking how many young people are denied runaway and homeless youth services due to a lack of capacity, and to make sure that New York City has the numbers that it needs to make sure that the runaway and homeless youth continuum meets the needs of all runaway and homeless youth. Again, thank you for your time, and like Beth said, I hope that we can continue to work together on the 3 additional runaway and homeless youth bills.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Martinez-Klaus, and I'm speaking on behalf of Communities United for Police Reform, a coalition of 200+ national and local groups and families of New Yorkers killed by police that supported Intro 541C and opposed Intro 182D. I am disappointed that the mayor's office only confirmed that these bills would be on today's agenda at the last minute. The fact that it is also occurring at nearly the same time as Erica Garner's funeral, who was a staunch advocate for police reform and the Real Right to Know Act, is disappointing and disrespectful. Intro 541C is strong, effective legislation that will help protect New Yorkers from unconstitutional police searches in our city and should be signed into law. It will advance safety and justice by increasing transparency and accountability during searches without a legal basis other than a person's consent. The mayor and the de Blasio administration made an agreement with lead sponsor Antonio Reynoso that the city would report on the number of declined searches each quarter with the same level of detail as the reporting requirements in the bill for agreed to consent searches. It is important for government transparency that the mayor release this agreement regarding reporting to the public and fulfill his commitment. Intro 182D has completely removed the most essential protections of the original legislation and should not be signed into law. It was opposed by every advocate of police reform in the city because it was stripped of its substantive protections, which led to the narrowest vote of any during the last legislative session. This bill no longer includes protections during traffic stops, which lack transparency and are the site of profiling, sexual harassment, and other abuses. It has removed protections for crime victims and witnesses. It creates a dangerous, artificial, legal threshold for identification that is solely determined and understood by police officers and not the public, exempting the majority, hundreds of thousands of the most common encounters. This not only creates an incentive for officers to mischaracterize their encounters as falling below suspicion so the requirement doesn't kick in, but it also dangerously leaves New Yorkers without a clear understanding of when they are entitled to an officer's identity and explanation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Leo Ferguson. I'm here with Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, representing New York City's Jewish community. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. And want to thank the lead sponsor, Antonio Reynoso, and the council for passing Intro 541, a really fantastic bill that represents real reform and protects the civil rights of all New Yorkers, long overdue, and very grateful to have it. And I'm looking forward to having you sign it, Mr. Mayor. But also want to express deep disappointment over the passage of Intro 182D, which is not compromise, but is a real step backwards for police reform. It is deeply dangerous. It does, in fact, create a vague standard which will leave New Yorkers confused If passed and signed into law, New Yorkers will expect to be entitled to know the identity of officers stopping them and the reason for the interaction, but instead hundreds of thousands of these stops are exempted from the bill, and we expect that some officers will continue to escalate these encounters because they feel their authority is being questioned. So it's actually worse than the status quo because of lack of substantive protection combined with the misleading portrayal of the bill. The fact that the entire police reform community objected to Intro 182 and had no support should tell you everything you need to know about whether this bill is in fact a real reform, a compromise, or a step backwards. It is in fact a step backwards. And of course, it exempts the overwhelming majority of low-level interactions unrelated to criminal suspicion that are the site of most of the abuse and, in fact, the entire reason for wanting this bill to pass. New Yorkers deserve better. The memory of Erica Garner right now being laid to rest. All New Yorkers deserve real police reform, a real Right to Know Act, and I hope that 182D will not be signed into law and that we will pass a real Right to Know Act in the next session.
Thank you. I don't make it a habit after testimony to affirm or disagree on any specific point. Obviously, I have disagreements on some of the last pieces of testimony, but respect the folks who came to testify. Want to just say now that we will be signing these bills at a later point, and I want to now, in Spanish, summarize everything that had come before us today. Hoy hemos tenido audiencias para 12 leyes. Con ellas, aceleramos el plan para que las plantas eléctricas usen combustibles más limpios. Adaptamos estándares más altos de eficiencia en el uso de energía en edificios de la ciudad. Informamos sobre la posibilidad de usar edificios y solares baldíos para vivienda asequible. Ayudamos a jóvenes sin hogar en su proceso de transición a los albergues para adultos. Aclaramos las interacciones entre el público y la policía y autorizamos al Departamento de Protección Ambiental a detener obras de construcción por problemas de ruidos. With that, this concludes the hearing, and thank you everyone for being here.